Because I started getting in the habit of calling Dur, and I'm like, you know what, that's just not right. I mean, that'd be like...
Mike, if a guy wants to be called Dur, let him be called Dur.
I prefer Tom.
Yeah, you prefer Tom.
Really care. It doesn't make a difference.
Check.
It's better for him if he's called.
Well, David Benjamin's still in front with the pair of threes. He's not going to know that. Goes check.
How would he know that? And of course, Dwan has picked up even more outs here. Any heart, any ace, any queen, or any jack.
Goes check. He seems to have slowed down an awful lot, Tom. Well, he's going to be quite happy with that river card. There isn't really a hand that David Benjamin can beat right now, though. Not a genuine hand, anyway. I think there's a few hands we've seen that Tom's raised with which might possibly have missed this flop.
Pass 8-8.
Well, Benjamin not going to lose anything there. Tom Dwan finally winning a pot, nothing really going his way.
When I first started playing live, I definitely did quite a few things wrong. I believe that I've learned pretty well. I've played a bunch of live poker in the last few months, but definitely there was a pretty steep learning curve for those first few weeks, the first month, where there were just a lot of little intricacies of live poker that I was missing.
We're at the FullTiltPoker.net $1 Million Cash Game. 7 players at the table. Phil Ivey taking a little bit of a break. And what do we have going on here? We've got a small blind, a big blind, a straddle, and then apparently David Benjamin is putting in a double straddle. What is that?
Well, basically we've got 300, 600 for the normal blinds. We've got 1,200 from Mike Madisau. That's just called a straddle. It's an optional overblind. And then it's gone to 2,400, another overblind, double the previous blind from David Benjamin. And really getting the action going.
And is his blind live as well?
It is. Doesn't happen in all cash games, but they're allowing it in this.
Pass.
And then we've got another re-raise from Tom Dwan. Well, or rather the first real actual action from seeing your cards from Tom Dwan. He's walked into a hand with Chris Ferguson.
And of course, it's been Chris Ferguson's day. Up almost 150,000 already. And he's got to love this situation. All that dead money in there.
And he really has beaten up on Tom Dwan.
26,000.
Well, that's a little bit of a raise, boys and girls. I don't see any aces or kings here. I'm in the fold.
Oh, you look. I was looking at the
It's paid impossible. You know what?
Well, David almost teasing us a bit with his showing us just the ace first.
Fun table is the next 3-4 hours, I'll say it.
And David Benjamin, just before he made his 2,400 live straddle, he did buy in for another $200,000. And he's called the re-raise from Chris Ferguson. Now Tom Dwan, who's stuck the most in this game, this could be an opportunity for him to maybe get out of it. Well, he's called. It's going to be 3 to the flop.
Yeah, and Dwan is in really bad shape.
7-2-2.
That's a pretty good flop for pocket queens.
Oh, you got to love that flop. Absolutely love that flop if you're Chris Ferguson.
Everybody pay 500 too. The guy win the pot and he get 500.
Very dry flop there. Rainbow 7-deuce-deuce. You can see the percentages. Ferguson way ahead, $80,000 pot.
Well, David's looking like he wants to have a bet, hoping that Chris Ferguson is sitting there with ace-king.
Well, I think the pot is just too big for him to give it up, which is why he's going to take a shot at it. And sure enough, he bets $38,000.
About half the size of the pot.
Pass.
Dirty sides to go. Now.
And I'm pretty sure that Chris Ferguson is going nowhere. Now, normally I would say he might just move all in here, but they're both very deep.
Yeah, it's a very, very deep pot.
Changed around here, I think.
Very, very deep pockets for these two in this pot.
How do I get in these lineups?
And David Benjamin's not only called a raise, he's called a raise and a re-raise. Pretty well called.
No.
Volunteered 24,000 from a re-raise from Chris Ferguson.
Does Ferguson need to decide right now if his queens are good?
Well, it looks like that's what he's decided to go for. 125,000, the bet from Chris Ferguson. Nearly $250,000 in this pot.
Real money there. $243,000 up for grabs. Action back to Benjamin. Not much there for Benjamin.
Probably just got it going through his head whether he thinks if he moves all in, if he can get Chris to lay it down.
Chris has already committed over $100,000 to this pot. Is there any way he can fold this?
Well, I think he's only got about 95 to 100,000 left. I very much doubt it.
I got a big game.
I think David's going to know that as well. I think he's just making it look like he's laying down some sort of a hand.
It's almost as if he's playing this.
Well, he's passed.
And Ferguson is going to take down a monster pot, nearly $250,000.
Incredible. Nearly $250,000 straight over to this man.
You are a gambling man.
Look at that profit of $241,000. He is by far our big winner.
My preference is for tournaments, but I still love cash games. But the cash games I like to play are when you're playing against the best players in the world, and that's what we got in this lineup today.
The last couple times I played with him in the cash game, he's won. You know, he plays a little differently, plays a little tighter than I would like him to play, but it works for him.
He's very, very tight. He's like a nit. He's like the nittiest person in the world, and he's the cheapest person in the world, and he's never going to put a chip in the pot without a can playing cash games. Now, in tournaments, it's different. But Chris is pretty darn tight playing cash games.
I think what makes a great high-stakes cash game player is someone who's not going to go on tilt, someone who can control their tempers, someone who's not going to get upset easily, because often players can get upset in a cash game if they lose a big hand, and that can really affect the way they play.
Patience is the #1 thing in the cash games. You know, you look at the greatest cash game players in history, they've all had a lot of patience.
You never get a tell or read off Chris Ferguson. He always calculates everything out, so just methodical, very tough.
I'm really analyzing how to play hands in a game theoretic approach. I'm not so much trying to analyze my opponents. I'm not one who goes and looks at films very often and tries to analyze opponents that way. I'm much more of an analytical player.
He picks his spots very carefully. That's his strength.
In poker, you know, you have to figure out what works for you, and you know, be able to play that style, figure out a way to win. He's done it, and he's done it effectively.
Welcome back to the Full Tilt Poker.net $1 million cash game, where the action is really beginning to get serious. Let's hand you straight back to your commentators, Gary Jones and David Tuckman.
Chris will tell you what he had. He won't tell you what he had.
Yeah.
12 straight.
Buttons in front of Patrick Antonius. We get another live straddle here from Benjamin.
I'm betting 5,000. I'm betting 5,000 on one of the top two.
Chris Ferguson with ace-8 in the cutoff.
No, I already bet him 5,000.
Now, for most of these players, that hand's good enough to raise and try to steal.
Just aces. Can I get like 2 to 1?
If any of them were going to lay it down, it might have been Chris, but no, he's going to follow suit. He's going to raise it up.
Look at
He
that.
can certainly afford it, having such a good day.
Hey, look at that stack in front of Chris Ferguson. Those black chips are $25,000 each.
No, it's just even money I take. Come on, you know it's a good bet. No, hold on.
Action over to Patrick Antonius.
Mike Madison not paying quite enough attention, passing out a turn there. I know it's unusual, but I think he was too busy talking.
Well, 2 call.
Really? What's he going to do? Raise it 125 right there with 2 queens? He's committed.
And Chris Ferguson cannot like the call behind him.
I'm with you for
They're going to bet me whatever you can bet.
What kind of odds can I get that he had just aces? Is anybody going to let me out?
David is going to bet you whatever you want.
Well, Ferguson has outflopped him. He's got second pair, top kicker. How do you play this, though, against a very dangerous Patrick Antonius behind you?
Well, it looks like he's going to play a little bit sneaky. He doesn't know where he is against Patrick. Patrick's actually played a pretty solid game. Got involved in the very first hand in a blind all-in against Phil Ivey. Lost 100,000 and then has hardly played much since.
You got a second best. You want to do on the kings and aces now? Any of them? Even money? Kings or aces for another 5.
How good you are, David.
The checker, Chris, has induced a bluff from Patrick. Check call seems about the right play in this.